So yes, I'm Emily Freeman, and I want to talk to you a little bit about snakes. See, I used to think that a snake was pretty much just a snake. I mean, they all have scales and are vaguely associated with the devil, but I was wrong. Turns out there are many things that differentiate snakes. Pythons are slow, big, and they're constrictors, whereas vipers are much smaller, much faster, and definitely poisonous. But humans, we're not like snakes. We're herd animals. I know we like to think of ourselves as more advanced than the other creatures that walk this earth. We cook our food and use computers, but at our core, we are still very much animals. And we have only survived because we have each other. Once we figured out the basics of food and water and shelter, we created specialization and division of labor. Some of us hunted, others gathered, we shared. I think that's pretty cool. But this evolutionary dynamic has had one critical repercussion, and that is that the group is held far above the individual. As a result, our brains desire conformity. I want you to take a minute and really think about your group of friends. What do they look like? What are their characteristics? What do you like most about them? For me, honestly, it's a lot of the same. White, college-educated, middle class. Pretty boring. But this affinity for conformity goes much further than friendships. We all adhere to social norms. We follow most traffic laws. We speed. We shake hands when we meet someone new. We dress up for weddings and funerals. And in the 50s, psychologist Solomon Asch created a study on conformity under the guise of visual perception. He had people sit down in small groups and look at one standard line and 3 comparison lines. And they were asked which of the 3 comparison lines was equal to the standard line. Now, anyone with their glasses on could tell you that it's B. But imagine sitting there. You'll go last. The person to the left of you, they answer A. That's weird. But he looked a little funny when he sat down. Then the next person answers A. And at some point, you'd start to think you were stroking out. What the real participant didn't realize is that they were the only volunteer. Everyone else was a plant. And they sat there and struggled. Should they trust their own eyes or go with the group? And here's the really scary part. Over a third of participants gave the wrong answer. Asch and other psychologists have found that people are more likely to conform if they're made to feel incompetent or insecure, if they're in groups of 3 or more, if everyone else agrees, or they feel like they're being watched, specifically by a manager. I want you to raise your hand if you've ever been excluded from a group. Yeah, I think most of us. Do you remember how that felt? I felt different, rejected, alone. Those are dark feelings. We are all different. Some of you are the oldest person on your team, and some of you are the youngest. Maybe you're the only man or woman or person of color. Perhaps you struggle with anxiety, depression. Maybe you have diabetes, a disability. You're married, have kids, you're single. You care for an ailing parent. We all have differences. And before I continue, I want to acknowledge that embracing differences at work is hard. Social diversity, the kind that comes from differences of race and gender and sexual orientation, it can cause conflict and discomfort. But being exposed to diversity changes the way you think. It increases creativity and innovation. It encourages teams to seek out different perspectives, and it improves problem solving. On top of all that, it makes diverse organizations more money. And I'm not making all this up. There are decades of research to support this. NCWIT, the National Center for Women in Information Technology, up in Boulder, is an excellent resource. Now, I'm a woman in tech, and I am not asking you to solve diversity in tech. That is so much bigger than me and you and this room. But I am going to ask you to do something very small and very specific. When you go to work tomorrow, I want you to pay attention. Pay attention to your assumptions and your actions. Watch those around you. We can all show more empathy for the people we work with, and especially those we interview and hire. Thank you.